John Keel and others have echoed Charles' Fort cry that we are property. The world may be in the mess that it is because we have been manipulated all this time by unseen forces, forces that prey off negative energies and suffering as long as it can continue to be generated. Okay, so what I'm doing today is I'm reading to you a book I literally started reading half an hour ago because it blew my mind. So today I'm simply reading. This is not me. This is just this book that my friend Thomas Joseph Brown turned me on to. And I'm like, I have to share this with you guys. So stay tuned for The Cosmic Pulse of Life by Trevor Constable. People become fearful when presented with evidence that clearly shows an entire ocean of beings exist unseen around us. This time it is an ocean of invisible air, and many of the inhabitants are smarter than those found in our watery depths, although many of these beings are peaceful and would prefer to be left alone. Some of them may not have our best interests in mind. Whatever their true agenda, anything that can operate unseen around us has a tremendous and frightening advantage over our lives. We are at their complete mercy if they wish to exercise such an advantage. Do we want to live our lives this way? Apparently so. People are naturally afraid of the unknown, so it is deemed better by our establishment societal gurus to adhere to the out of sight, out of mind philosophy. If you cannot see it, it doesn't exist, right? Wrong. This book shows you that it does exist. They exist in an unseen reality. John Keel and others have echoed Charles' Fort cry that we are property. The world may be in the mess that it is because we have been manipulated all this time by unseen forces, forces that prey off negative energies and suffering as long as it can continue to be generated. Most of the people you know and will ever meet are kind-hearted, caring souls. So why is the world in such turmoil? Why do thousands of innocent children starve to death every day, along with all the other cruelties that we allow or inflict on others? Are we really that terrible as a race? In some ways we are, but it may not all be our doing. Yes, this book really can cause trouble, but even more so for them. They want to remain hidden, but this book shines a spotlight on them for the very first time. As for us and for the way we are approaching this evidence, it should be remembered that you cannot see the fruits of the valley without climbing the mountain. As a culture, we must climb, or we will simply remain as property. As we move forward into this exploration of these other invisible life forms that share our planet, we do need to keep in mind the point of view of what could be the majority of these hidden ones. They may be peaceful just like us and want to be left alone to live a natural, unencumbered life. They may wish to be hidden, not so much for nefarious reasons, but for self-preservation alone. Anything humankind can see it has killed, exploited, or depleted to the point of extinction. We have raped the planet, and they, on the other hand, may not want to be our next victim. Can you blame them? Champions of animal rights or anti-pollution could present much of this argument better than I could, but I'm sure you get the point. To those who will go out with their cameras as a result of this work and explore the infrared realms out of curiosity or for research, I applaud you. However, I ask you to be respectful as well. If you harass these creatures, there is a price to pay, as evidenced by some of the clear examples in this book. This carefully researched book is not an invitation for fools to rush in. Again, I cannot stress strongly enough for you being respectful towards other life forms if you should choose to proceed. There is a balance in nature that should not be disrupted any further than it already is. So such work should be done by professional researchers or conscientious people who are actually aware of the science and energies involved. Before choosing to publish this book, the author warned me of the implications ahead of time more than once. He explained the previous fire and complete destruction of the publishing company and the entire first printing of this book, followed by the explosion of a tanker near his home and the loss of more books when they were reprinted. The reader may think that these events were mere coincidences, a paranoia on the part of the author, but until you come into contact with these entities or these energies on a daily basis, you should not judge. They are real. They have intelligence. This book is important because it brings them out into the open for the very first time and shows you how to observe them. I told Trevor that yes, we would publish and that there was nothing to worry about. This time the books would be printed digitally and kept on a disc out of state, so would be immune to these sort of shenanigans. But my father also lives out of state. His house caught on fire yesterday. While his wife was out, he was napping on the couch and woke up choking on smoke. Huge flames greeted him when he opened the door to the garage. He was able to put out most of the flames with a fire extinguisher and the help of the fire department. If he had not been home, the house would be gone. If he had not awakened in time, he would be gone. They had to rip out the ceiling of the garage where it had started, and many items were lost. The cause? The garage door opener had mysteriously burned into flames by itself. Do these events, going back to the other printings, form a pattern? Or is it merely a coincidence? You decide. Okay, my lovely. So one of my best friends, you've seen him on this channel, Thomas Joseph Brown, told me about this book. I didn't realize it until I got into the next preface, where they talk about a man that was so brave to publish this book because of all of the carnage that went to previous publishers. That was, in fact, Thomas Joseph Brown. So props to Thomas for publishing this book. But it's fascinating to me, and as I said, I think this is going to take the investigation into a whole new direction because of the idea of property. So I'm going to read the next bit of this book to you, and I'm going to spin it in with some other information I've been reading lately because it's just kind of mind-blowing. All right, this has to do with UFOs. Had official science risen in its responsibilities in connection with UFO phenomena, responsibilities that it owes to the human race, this book would never have been necessary. There would have been no more need for me to research, investigate, and write about UFOs than there is for me to write about medicine or electronics. Science is professionally engaged in these areas. History clearly records that official science defaulted in the UFO field by evading its responsibilities at the modern inception of UFO phenomena in the late 1940s. In the interim, official science has proved itself incapable of much beyond organized obscuration and ridicule of those who sought to assume the responsibility for UFOs from which it has recoiled. This book will show that UFOs are the death knell of the old order in science mechanism, and that they simultaneously herald a new epoch in science and culture. In this coming era, much of the old knowledge that is now gospelized and crammed by force into unwilling young minds will be either unmasked as apocryphal or be subject to extensive review and revision. All disciplines of science will be revivified. The coming life positive science will largely shape the future of mankind in accordance with living needs, giving man back his humanity. Mechanistic science deserves full respect for its vast achievements and for the way it has clarified thinking. Claims that it is an adequate tool in its present form for cosmic investigation must, however, be regarded with unrelenting suspicion. There is something fundamentally wrong with a mode of science cognition that can neither face nor cope with the eruption of the cosmic mainstream into human consciousness, leaving the field to amateurs like myself. Officials in the UFO field have become a priesthood defending itself against cosmic truth rather than a brotherhood of free men bound by their cosmic pursuit of truth. A definite process of evasion has been operative in science ever since UFOs burst in upon mankind during and following the Second World War. Even the external superficial aspects of UFOs has not been honorably or honestly tackled. There has been no penetrating investigation in the main direction in which UFO phenomena lead human inquiry by the very mode of their manifestation. That main direction is into the invisible. I'm just going to stop here and refer you back to a podcast that I did a long time ago called The Half Truth That Hides Non-Human Entities. You might want to check out that video, which is a podcast, however, because it makes this point. It makes the point that there seems to be a irresistible effort to prevent us from looking into the invisible. And so when I read this, I'm like, oh my God, here we go again. And it is for a very good reason, my lovelies. But let me continue, okay? In the supreme adventure of my life, I followed stumblingly in that direction. I found strange life forms and objects in a dynamic, unseen, physical borderland from which scientific attention has largely been diverted. This book is an account of those adventures and concomitant findings, written as non-technically as possible so that any intelligent layman may follow me. Forced to work on my own because I was rejected as too far out, even within the UFO field, aided by only one faithful companion, financing everything personally, and at every stage breaking new theoretical and experimental ground, this project has been relentlessly demanding. Inadequacies accordingly exist in my work that would be easily rectifiable with resources, time, and assistance. Further delay in disseminating what has been learned nevertheless cannot be justified on that account. The discharge of this work without obligations to any outside source on this earth is offered as a compensating factor. Today's truth is that the UFO subject is so staggeringly vast and complex as to defy full elucidation at this time. This book is no more than the end of the beginning. I believe its general outline will prove valid and enduring, especially my conviction that Dr. Wilhelm Reich's discovery of the orgone energy is the master technical key to this mystery. Now, let me just stop you there. I don't know. I'm sure you guys know Wilhelm Reich. What I'm finding along the way in this research, and you'll note if you've read A New Science in Heaven, and it kind of has to do with John Anthony West too, is that these renegade minds, these renegade archaeologists, these renegade physicists, these renegade scientists, they have A, the best information on the planet, and B, they end up dying in jail or in poverty or persecuted and vilified and pilloried and all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm not imagining that there is some conspiracy here to keep all of this information under wraps. And when eventually season 4 comes out and we get into the subject of magic, You're going to see how this storyline plays into that aspect of things as well. It is crazy and it is absolutely insane. But Dr. Wilhelm Reich is one of the victims of this desire to keep everything under wraps. Anyway, I'll go back to the book. Young, aggressive, and truthful men and women in science of the future will establish the full determinism of the strange biological phenomena that I have recorded. This will bring them both satisfaction and renown. I have neither the drive nor the resources to tackle such a project, for I am a generalist rather than a specialist, and an adventurer rather than a scientist. Within a relatively short time, however, energetic young people are going to plunge into this profound cosmic mystery in large number, and they will get more and better evidence than I have been able to get. The rational securing of the new knowledge is the only way to end the old order, because we must have hold of the new before we may let go of the old. I wish these bright young people of tomorrow the best. Because of my faith in the new humanity now coming to Earth, I point to my pictures and say to those people of the past who personally seek to block the new knowledge, here is what you have to investigate and deal with in your space age. If not now, then tomorrow. Here are some of the life forms that your grandchildren and great-grandchildren will know all about in a better world when you have left the earth. This is my gift to my fellow humans, specimens brought back from the upper borderlands of physical nature by an adventurer who dared to do while you burrowed your heads in slaughterous filth. An ordinary man pulled these things out of space around you while you reached out uncomprehendingly for the corpse of the moon. Of course UFOs are alive. In your deadness and sterility, you cannot grasp that. Living, unseen beings, living in an ocean of living energy, living, unseen macrobacteria, etheric fauna, feeding on living energy, and constructs, ships driven through space, unseen by the living energy that fills all space. This life panorama drops sporadically into human sight nowadays by the processes of Ethereal physics that we are just beginning to understand. When this happens, you can neither bear to look at it, nor can you comprehend it, because it goes to the bioenergetic roots of your existence, turning you into irrational and frightened primitives. He's not mincing words here, is he? Had it not been for 4 outstanding human beings, I might well have been among the millions who've had no option but to accept the Jabberwocky dispensed by official science on the subject of UFOs. These 4 humans contributed decisively to my personal development and to my understanding of cosmic processes as they present themselves in UFO phenomena. Each of these 4 avatars entered my life in turn at the right time, and without them this book could not have been written. Dr. Franklin Thomas, an optometrist, Doctor of Divinity, master printer and publisher who was an adept and master teacher. He is responsible for setting my feet on the pathway that led to this book. Dr. Rudolf Steiner, we all know, we're not going to go into that, provided the human race with the spiritual scientific conceptions necessary for the renewal of human culture and for a healthy, foolproof understanding of the laws and forces operative in such cosmic phenomena as UFOs. Directed to Steiner by Franklin Thomas, I found my whole life changed as a result. And again, I cannot agree with that more, because Rudolf Steiner, I think I talk about in that podcast that I told you to listen to, because Rudolf Steiner possibly identifies these beings and explains the agenda that they have for us on planet Earth, which we can actually see playing out right now more than ever, I must say. But anyway, back to the book. Dr. Ruth Brown was a pioneer, inventor, and New Age physician whom I was privileged to serve and love in her final years. She provided the fundamental techniques for manipulating the cosmic life energy, more commonly known as orgone energy, in medical diagnosis, therapy, and medical photography, the latter self-validating. Dr. Drown was also responsible for the first application of such radionic knowledge to the UFO field, where its implications are endless. She was unmercifully smeared, persecuted, and pilloried by uncomprehending contemporaries. Again, see, I make my point, or he makes my point. Her work is central to the forthcoming cosmic communication break-in. And of course, Dr. Wilhelm Reich, distinguished protege of Sigmund Freud and a pioneer in psychoanalysis and scientific sexology, was the discoverer in the 20th century of the cosmic life energy, or orgone energy. This discovery will someday be recognized as the most important technical discovery in the history of mankind. Dr. Reich's discovery at last permits otherwise impenetrable UFO phenomena to be understood as fundamentally bioenergetic manifestations. He died in a federal prison in 1957. And U.S. agents under court orders put his scientific works to torch in a spectacle seen nowhere in the world since Nazi times. I wonder what's so threatening about it. I freely acknowledge the magnitude of my debt to Wilhelm Reich, the most gifted natural scientist of the 20th century and one of humanity's greatest benefactors. I stood on the shoulders of these four avatars in sketching my outline of the greatest mystery of all time. Without them, I would have no adequate perspective, no insight into the new knowledge, and no means of charting my course. To all who may find it incredible that an ordinary man could come in under the learned nose of official science and do what is herein recounted, I can say only that my four titans were with me all the way. They taught me that the cosmos speaks to him who asks. Oh my God, somebody posted that on my YouTube page. Okay. Woohoo. I'm catching up, guys. I'm catching up. Okay. Wow. And I love you guys. You guys, honestly, you guys are helping me so much. Like, you're sending me things that are just blowing my mind. So it takes a village, right, to get under these. Takes a village. Oh my God. Anyway, as to how it was possible to do all these things, the answer lies in my activism, which at all times overwhelmed quibbles concerning classical methodology that is already obsolescent. I have been able to present this work because I am for life and love, and reached out into the cosmos with that in mind and heart. I expect to find the pulse of life, and I did. So others. So will all others. So will all others who do likewise. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this section for a second here. Okay, so I want to go back here for a second. So Trevor's talking about the idea that there are these invisible non-human intelligences that fill our biosphere, our borderlands, as he puts it. He also makes the point that most of them are probably benign and just want to kind of be left alone. And he makes a good argument for that being the case. But it doesn't mean that all of them are benign, okay? It doesn't mean that all of them have our best interest at heart. And this is where I come to the idea popularized by Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute. One of the places that is talked about in the Stargate document of the CIA, which is, you must read, it's fabulous. Many people have done videos on it here. But Robert Monroe, in his astral journeys, was able to meet and discuss and talk to many different kinds of creatures, inhabitants of the other realms that exist around us. And one of those was a creature that talked about the idea of Loosh. We've just lost the fabulous David Lynch, but David Lynch talks about an idea called Gamboja, I think it is, in the Twin Peaks, which is an invisible energy that these demons love to consume. And essentially, this is the same idea that Monroe was talking about or this being was talking to him about, that we produce a substance that these invisible creatures consider to be incredibly valuable and are farming it, essentially. In fact, what I will do for you is there's a fabulous channel of Robert Monroe where he's either recounting the stories or has the actual people that are on these journeys telling the story. So I'm going to put a video down below with the actual story of this creature talking about the farming, the creation of a people farm for the creation of Loosh. Well, not a people farm. I mean, look, here's the thing. Here's the bottom line. We have animal farms all the time, and we harvest them for our own purposes. It's not such a stretch of imagination to think that something higher up the food chain is farming us as well, right, at the end of the day. And, not that it's good for us, not that a chicken farm is good for the chickens, but hey, it's absolutely a potential. And again, going back to my talk, where's the best place to hide if you are one of these farmers? It's in the invisible. It just happens to be in the place that we're not allowed to look. We're not allowed to look beyond the material. Our science prevents us. I mean, it's like a perfect scam, right? It's a perfect scam. Everything in our society is set up to prevent us from looking in this area, this non-material area, this invisible area. And I think it could possibly be the biggest conspiracy of all. I mean, the amount of forces that are directing us away from this, right? There's nothing to see here, folks. I mean, I'm like, the more I read, the more I'm convinced. Anyway, what we'll do is the next chapter in this book again goes into how many places burned down and how, again, Thomas Brown was one of the brave people who brought this book to us. So I'm going to bring you along with me as we go through this so that we can shine light into the invisible. And hey, with people like Rudolf Steiner and Thomas Brown and Wilhelm Reich, certainly comes with some quality people involved. This is a book called The Cosmic Pulse of Life, The Revolutionary Biological Power Behind UFOs by Trevor James Constable. And he was actually a really interesting person. We'll get into him later because he comes from a very credible, non-woo-woo kind of space. And he was a friend of Thomas Joseph Brown. So maybe we can have him come back and actually tell us a little bit about Trevor himself. But I find this fascinating. So it looks like this investigation has gone in a whole new direction, as Chance loves to say. That was from some show we were watching. It's hysterical. I don't know if it's as funny for you, but it's funny for me. Anyway, more soon, lovelies.
One template to rule them all. One of the many puzzling questions this research has brought up has to do with certain spatial relationships that parallel the geometry of the human form. Often, these spatial analogues will be in the architecture itself and impossible to actually see. We have seen these organic proportions, these vital spatial relationships, both in single structures and in the layout of entire temple complexes. It begs the question, is there a functional reason why these measurements and proportions are so essential to the layout and operation of the temple? And why would they be seen again and again across cultures and across time? There is something about the ancient technology of the temple that requires the same harmonic relationships as the human body. Are we looking at an ancient, lost or forgotten branch, or modality of science, based on principles and knowledge that have been lost to time, or simply rejected by the modern West? Could this be related to modern scientific advancements in electromagnetics, resonance and field theory, and their mysterious interaction with human consciousness? In the case of more modern architecture, it might be easier to dismiss as a modern architect paying an homage to a design from the ancient world. But like an anecdote involving the cargo cult, its outer form is copied, but its hidden function and intellectual underpinning are absent. But in cases like the Hebrew movable tabernacles, there really were no architectural details except for these key proportions and relationships, and the same direct correspondence to the spatial relationships and intervals of the vital centers of the human body. In Egypt, Sumeria, Babylonian, Akkadian, and Vedic cultures, in ancient Buddhist and South American cultures, these same secret templates invisibly govern the layout of the physical temples. A common, hidden message expressed across each of the major cultures of the ancient world, and recurring as echoes in later sacred art and architecture. This is another example of an anomalously sophisticated scientific and technical acumen that appears to be fully developed at the very beginning of recorded history. What are these mysterious invisible templates drawing our attention to? Could we be looking at the tattered evidence of an ancient science, whose purposes and foundational understandings are opaque to us in the modern world? And is there something deeper that these temples all carry? How can it be that one template is the invisible and silent governor of temples and sacred art from around the world and throughout time? This is no conspiracy theory. It's not about aliens or unprovable speculation. It's about artists discovering a visual language embedded in the art and architecture of the ancient world. A visual language that transmits an ancient message. A scientific time capsule for the ages, immortalizing an anomalously sophisticated corpus of knowledge about the very thing that continues to elude modern Western scientists: the hard problem of consciousness. Could this be a new Peary-Rice map? Could we be looking at ancient schematics which diagram and explain the aspects of the brain involved in our experience of consciousness? Could this finally be irrefutable evidence that the ancients understood and mapped the inner landscape, the inner universe of consciousness, as meticulously as they did the outer world? And what would the revelation of such a science mean to us in the modern day? In Magical Egypt Season 4, we demonstrate how these hidden artistic visual languages, which have been hiding in plain sight for all of recorded human history, are not found just in the ruins of ancient Egypt, but in the earliest Taoist and Hindu traditions as well, unifying art and science to create something that looks for all the world like the long-lost owner's manual for the human conscious experience. What does it all mean? To watch the entire documentary cataloguing these remarkable new discoveries, visit us at www.magicalegypt.com.